A lot of churches will see themselves as primarily reaching out to one group of people, usually one age group or generation. You know, there might be a church that aims for the older people, or they might aim for the Gen Xers or the baby boomers, or nowadays it's the millennials. And they try to gear their ministries in that one particular direction. But I think that if a church does that, it's always my conviction that church that may grow, but it may grow in kind of a warped or one-sided way, in the sense that they really are missing something of what God meant the church to be in the first place. The other thing that tends to happen sometimes when you gear the ministries of a church toward a particular group or generation and try to cater to their needs is that the church might end up developing kind of consumer-oriented Christians, people that are just looking for those things which will make them happy and meet their needs and the needs of their family. And when that happens, you also miss something of what the church is supposed to be. Because really the question you should ask when looking for a local church, looking for a place to plug in, is not just what kind of a church will meet my needs and the needs of my family, but what kind of a church will, yes, meet our needs and then edify us, but also where can we plug in and be involved in serving one another, and also be involved in serving the people outside of the church and in the community. And when the Bible describes ministry, particularly in the pastoral epistles, places like 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus, where the church's function and even structure is described to some extent, it really is obvious that all the generations are involved in the church. You have the older people teaching the younger people, and yet at the same time you have the younger people not being looked down on because they're young and they have something to contribute as well. So you really have the generations ministering to one another, and it's a beautiful thing. If a church tries to grow in a multi-generational way, it could face some real obstacles and some real difficulties. We're aware of that because when you look at the different generations, they of course tend to have different preferences and tastes and habits of doing things when it comes to areas like worship and music, and sometimes even the way that they communicate and the way they pray even. There might be some differences. Some of them are very obvious and some of them are more subtle, and there are things that we have to realize are there if we're going to have a multi-generational church. And that also means that as part of a multi-generational church, we have to learn to make compromises, recognizing that the ministry of the church and our experience together is not always going to be exactly what I want or what I would prefer, but there at times we're going to have to make a compromise to serve my brothers and sisters. But the Bible does talk about that. It talks about preferring one another in love. And if I'm going to prefer you in love, that means that sometimes I'm going to kind of sublimate my own needs in order that yours can be met. And that's part of what it means to live together in Christ. I think one of the questions that you might want to ask yourself as a small group is, what is the difference, practically speaking, between what we might call multi-generational ministry on one hand, and on the other hand, intergenerational ministry? They're really two different things. Multi-generational means we are reaching out to and trying to involve people from every generation in the church. Intergenerational ministry maybe goes a little bit farther than that and says that we as generations are ministering to one another. And as we do that, the church grows in a more powerful way. In your small group, you might want to ask yourself the question: how can we be involved in multi-generational ministry in the sense of making sure that we're trying to meet the needs of a particular age group or maybe even a more forgotten part of the church or a forgotten demographic within the church. But you may want to also ask the question: how are we involved in intergenerational ministry? How can we perhaps, maybe there are people of different ages in our groups and in our group here, and they can minister to one another and have different perspectives and teach one another. Or maybe we can find a way to bless people in our church that are from another generation, somebody that might be very different than us, and yet we can really grow, and we can really be enriched by being involved in multi-generational and intergenerational ministry as a small group. So something you just might want to check out as you spend your time in discussion.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Raymond England, and I'm here to share my testimony with you guys. Now, is it safe to say that pretty much everybody has a team that they root for? Okay, now imagine your team in the championship game and they lose. Now, hold on to that feeling. That's how I felt waking up every day of my life. Waking up for me was a challenge. I grew up in a single-parent household, me and my 4 siblings. And for the majority of my childhood, we lived in a shelter until my mom met this guy. And for 10 years, I watched this man verbally and mentally abuse my mom. It got so bad that she didn't care about her appearance, and she used to say stuff like she hate her life or she thinks about killing herself on a regular basis. It got to the point where she actually tried. And for the longest, my brothers and sisters used to ask me, well, why did this happen to me? Or why can't we never be happy for once? And they're looking for me to answers because I was the oldest. And my question to God was, how can I lead when I'm lost myself? I like to think of my walk with Christ as like a midnight stroll to the bathroom. You know, you wake up in the middle of the night, it's dark, you can't see. It's like you know where the light switch is at, but it's whatever. You walked this path a million times, so you just keep on going. So you start walking, then stub your toe on one of Jacob's toys. It's okay. It's like I still know where the light is, but I'll be all right. I can still make it to the bathroom. Then you hit your toe on the dresser. Now you start to feel around looking for something to help guide you to the bathroom or something to rely on. So you flick the light switch on. For me, God is that light switch. And no matter what the obstacle is, whether it's my mom's cancer or me not knowing where my next meal is coming from, or even me being shot at, none of these things matter because I'm not doing it alone, but I'm relying on him. And to answer my question of how I'm supposed to lead, it's simple. I'm not, but to follow, to be a better follower of him. And he led me right here to First Alliance Church, where I was empowered to do leadership roles such as Power Time Camp Counselor, or the wonderful time I had at VBS, or even interning with Ben. I like to think that God made me come from nothing, so I appreciate everything. I still walk the same path and have some of the same obstacles. It's just this time, I'm keeping my light switch on. Thank you.
My name is Doris Allen. I'm here to tell you how the Lord led me to First Alliance Church as an older adult, maybe mature adult. I did not grow up in a Christian home. We went to a Lutheran church and we'd go maybe on Christmas. But it was nothing like this. I got married when I was very young, very dumb, and had 2 children. My husband was a good-hearted person, but he let alcohol rule him, and it got worse and worse. When he drank, he became very mean, very abusive. One night in February of 1968, I was at home alone with a sick child. 2 children, the baby was sick, and I heard a knock on the door, and when I looked out, it was 2 boys that I went to school with. They had their Bibles. I let them in, and they prayed for my sick son and read the Bible, and they asked me if I had ever been saved, and I really didn't know what they were even talking about. But after they explained and read the Bible to me some more, I knew that I wanted Jesus to come in my heart. So I was saved that night. And time went on, and the abuse got worse. And after 13 years of marriage, I got away. With the help of his family and my family, we found a safe place to hide. And we were okay. I worked 2 jobs to support us. I worked my regular job in the daytime and CNA at night, and on the weekends. But and we made it with the Lord's help. Then I met this guy named John Allen, and it took us a while to get to know each other. He was very shy. I was very shy. Finally, he asked to take me and the kids out for dinner, and we went. And so one time led to several more. My children fell in love with him before I did. Then finally I fell in love with him, and we married in 1976. We've been married 40 years. After we got married, we wanted to do everything right this time, so we joined a church. And in 1978, we rededicated our life to Christ. And we were sprinkled. A few years later, my son was in a Baptist church. He said, "Mom, you've got to be submerged." And so we were submerged. So I guess we've been double dipped. And we were very active in this church. And we went there for 34 years. There was a lot of turmoil in that church. We're always arguing about something. So in February 2012, we said we'd had enough. So that Sunday we left, and it was like cutting an arm off, because this had been a big part of our church, our life for so many years. We stayed at home several Sundays and watching the ministers on TV, and it just didn't seem right. So we started visiting different churches, and just for worship service. We were not going to get involved in anything. So late 2012, we came to First Alliance to visit, and we're still here. And we attended the newcomers class and understood what First Alliance is all about. And so we still was not going to get involved in too much, but Betty Koontz asked us to go on trips with the seniors, and we got to know a few people. We did that. And then Pastor Paul kept talking about getting plugged in. So I said, well, maybe we could be greeters. Well, the greeters ended up being, we started coming to Sunday school, and then we started getting involved in the senior lunches, and started taking meals to the people that had been in the hospital. And I guess we're plugged in, and we're going to join the church September 25th.